Liverpool are going to win the league. And the result and the performance that we saw them secure against Nottingham Forest is an amplification of my belief that Liverpool are going to win the league. It was fantastic, wasn't it? What a game of football. What an atmosphere. It was like it was 1980 all over again. Liverpool and Nottingham Forest competing for top honours, the juggernauts of English football. And that year, Liverpool won the league. And that year, Nottingham Forest won the European Cup. They retained the European Cup. This year, Liverpool are going to win the league and Nottingham Forest are going to make it into the European Cup. Forest were exceptional, sublime. Nuno Espirito Santo has done such an amazing job there. But I don't understand how Liverpool going to the City ground, a difficult ground to go, a difficult place to play. Forest have already been Liverpool's kryptonite this season. Arne Slot has already lost a game to Nuno Espirito Santo this season. They're 1-0 down away from home under the floodlights. I don't understand how people aren't aware that that's an excellent result for Liverpool. You're not going to win every game of the season. You are going to occasionally need to get a credible draw, a valuable draw. The value of a point is so important. Not losing games that you could lose, turning defeats into draws is the stuff of champions. It's what champions do. And how anybody can look at a result away at Forest, getting a point away at Forest from a losing position and somehow position it as an example of the vulnerability of Liverpool, I really just don't get it. I mean, it's true that Liverpool have drawn 4 and won 3 of their last 7. Drawn 4, won 3 of their last 7. And I suppose you could argue that that is the sign of a blip. Well, let me tell you this. If that is the blip, if that is Arne Slot's blip this season, then he will be over the moon with that. And I tell you what, if you analyse each of the results on an individual basis, put each result into a vacuum and explore what happened in those 4 draws, I think that ultimately you can position them as being fairly good draws. Away at St James's Park, for example, off the back of playing Real Madrid and Manchester City in successive games. With Everton, it didn't happen, but with Everton waiting around the corner. Going to St James's Park, drawing 3-3 under the floodlights against a very good Eddie Howe team. That isn't an example of a vulnerability. And the other reason why I think that we should be using these results, Forest away, a good draw. St James's Park, Newcastle away, a good draw. The other reason why I think you should be looking at these results and seeing it more as an example of why Liverpool will win the league rather than why Liverpool won't win the league is because of what they are up against. They are competing against teams that are not capable of doing that. They are competing against teams who will not turn those kind of performances into draws. They will lose those games. So, look, if this is the blip, they've maintained their position at the top of the league during a blip. They are not losing games during a blip. They've gone away to Forest and got an excellent draw. So I tell you this much. Arne Slot, who, by the way, is just outrageously brilliant, isn't he? He is so good. But I guarantee you that he will be really happy. And I think off the back of what we saw against Nottingham Forest, he deserves so much credit. He really does. I think that you could almost say that the reason that Liverpool got the result that they got and came very close to winning the game, you know, there was some brilliant defending, brilliant goalkeeping. Liverpool could have easily won the game. It's because of Slot. It's because of Slot. Look, don't get me wrong. Mohamed Salah is great, an icon, a Premier League great, a Liverpool great. I'm not suggesting that it isn't Salah. But if you force me to put it down to one thing, it's not Salah. It's not Van Dijk, as immense, imperious as Van Dijk has been this season. It's not Van Dijk. It's not Gravenberch. You know, Gravenberch is the best in the league in his position. It's not him either. It's not Diaz, who is rapidly becoming one of the best footballers in the world. The answer is Arne Slot. If you have to say one thing, it's Arne Slot. He handles everything perfectly. He has the Midas touch, and he got them the point against Forest. It wasn't, look, it was him. I genuinely believe that it was him. Sometimes games are won and lost within the dugout. Games are changed from the dugout. Excellent managers dictate what happens on the pitch from the dugout. And it was Arne Slot's bravery that secured Liverpool that point and could have secured Liverpool the 3 points. Proactive management. Give the opposition something to worry about. Give Nuno Espirito Santo something to process. Don't sit there passively. Don't be a reactive manager. Be a proactive manager. And when we saw Arne Slot on 65 minutes start making moves, Start making tactical tweaks. Start making personnel tweaks. He gambled. He was brave. And that is what you need to be as a manager. You cannot rest on your laurels. You cannot be a reactive manager. We've got our own issues at Chelsea, but let's use Gareth Southgate as an example. Someone in the opposition dugout makes a substitution. Gareth Southgate makes a substitution. He never gives them something to think about. He's never proactive. He was always reactive. Think about what Arne Slot did. It was so clever. It was so brave. It was a gamble, and it paid off. Look, you could argue maybe taking Robertson off wasn't a gamble. Taking Robertson off, you could argue, was a little bit of a no-brainer. He's been struggling this season. He was struggling against Forest. That one, perhaps you could argue, wasn't brave. I believe bringing Tsimikas on was still quite an offensive move, still quite a brave move. Taking off a tried and tested player in Robertson is still quite brave. But even if you don't see that as being especially brave, you must concede that the other substitution was simply breathtaking. Taking off Konate to bring on Jota, to drop Gravenberch back into this sort of hybrid central midfielder, centre-half, that was so offensive. It was so unpredictable. It was so desperate. It was brave. It was desperate. It was going for the jugular, and it caught Nottingham Forest out. Quite simply, it caught an excellent manager in Nuno Espirito Santo out. The way that he made that substitution was so brave, and 22 seconds later, it paid off. Do you see what happens? 22 seconds later, the manager brings on Tsimikas, brings on Diogo Jota, and within 22 seconds, what happens? The two players combine. Liverpool's title challenge receives that boost that it so desperately needs. 22 seconds into a manager's decision, it all comes up rosy. And that is what Arne Slot is doing. Look, there was a moment, right, when Tsimikas and Diogo Jota were about to come on. You could see them in deep conversation. You could see Diogo Jota really talking to Tsimikas, almost managerially. He was talking to him, coaxing him, giving him some advice. And it reminded me a little bit. I remember listening to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, I think it was on the overlap, speaking about what he would be doing because he was such a good substitute, known as being a super sub. He said that he was playing for the 90 minutes. He just wasn't playing for the 90 minutes. He said that what he was doing during the first 70 minutes, 60 minutes of the game wasn't sitting there waiting for the call. It was studying the play, looking for areas to exploit, finding the vulnerability in the opposition. And then when he was given the green light to enter the fray, he would know exactly what to do, exactly what run to make, exactly where the chink in the armour was. And that is what a student of the game and a true professional of the game does. I think Diogo Jota has adopted a very similar policy. Diogo Jota was sitting there looking for the weakness, finding something to exploit, giving Tsimikas exactly the words of wisdom that he needed. Then they get on the pitch, the corner. What happens? Corner comes in. Diogo Jota, suddenly it's 1-1. Suddenly Liverpool's title charge is looking solid again. And it was no surprise. Because if you look at them sitting on the bench, you could see that it was going to happen. You could see that goal was going to come. And what a good goal it was. Beating Murillo. How good's Murillo, by the way? We should talk about him. I could hear the Forest fans. Des Walker came on the pitch. And when I was really young, you used to hear a chant of "You'll never beat Des Walker." Right? He was an immense centre half in the way that in the way that Sol Campbell was immense, in the way that Van Dijk is immense, in the way that Terry was immense. Des Walker was that, and if Des Walker played Premier League football more than he did, in the way that Paul McGrath, if he had played Premier League football more than he did, they would be spoken about as the best defenders of all time. But weirdly, we only ever do it for Premier League era. I don't know why, but that's how it works. But Murillo, I heard the Forest fans using the Des Walker chant to demonstrate their love for Murillo, which tells you everything you need to know. They hold Walker in such high regard, and they clearly hold Murillo in the similar regard. But somehow Diogo Jota, clinical, got ahead of him. And set pieces for Liverpool have not been their strong point this season. It's the one area in their game where they haven't exactly shone. And, I don't think they've scored a set-piece goal since Virgil van Dijk scored against Arsenal in October. That's how long it has been. They're not good at set pieces. And suddenly, they've made use of set pieces. It was also the fastest goal scored by a Liverpool substitute on record in the Premier League era. So nobody has been introduced to the field of play and made an impact more devastatingly quickly than Diogo Jota did. And Diogo Jota is so good. He is so good. If you try and think of what the difference is, what's the difference, say, between Liverpool and everyone else? But Liverpool and the title challengers. It's the strength from the bench. It's the strength in depth. It's the ability to change games. It's a manager who will be brave and change the game and make the offensive substitution, but it's having the players and the skill set to do that. They have so many goals in the team, goals galore, this Liverpool team. And bringing on Jota totally changed Liverpool. I rate Luis Diaz really highly, but Jota came on and totally changed it. Like prior to Jota's introduction, Liverpool had a lot of chances, but they literally didn't have a shot on target. They had 10 efforts, none on target. The 11th effort, after Diogo Jota is introduced, goes into the back of the net. The second that Diogo Jota comes onto the pitch, Liverpool score goals. And off the back of that, they start hitting the target more frequently. They start knocking on the door more regularly. Like I said, 10 shots, none on target. By the time Jota comes on, 23 shots, 7 on target. And like I say, they could have won it. If it wasn't for Sells, I mean, they would have won the game. You know, it was possible for Diogo Jota to have scored a hat-trick after his introduction. That is the brilliance of the man, and that is the brilliance of Arne Slot, bringing the best out in him. So for Liverpool, I think they should be over the moon. I really do. They won't have to go to Forest again this season. They won't have to play Nottingham Forest again in the league this season. Forest have been a problem, a thorn in the side, kryptonite, troubling for Arne Slot. That's over. They've got that out the way. They've got Manchester United out the way. They won't have to worry about that again. And what have they done? They've maintained their position at the top of the league. They've maintained a points cushion. The reason why you do your best in the Premier League to establish a points cushion is so that you have a little bit of room for manoeuvre. So anybody that is looking at these results and seeing it as problematic for Slot, I really do not agree. I don't see it as an issue. And ultimately, Liverpool yesterday, they should have scared everyone. They got the reward that they wanted. Their persistence paid off. Fine, they've drawn a few games that they shouldn't have done, but look at those games in isolation. Look at the game at St James's Park. Look at the game against Manchester United. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. And getting Nottingham Forest out the way is another example of that. Forest were excellent. You know, they really, really were. But with Diogo Jota in the team to come off the bench, his dynamism is so good. And I actually think he deserves a chance to start. The only debate is, should he start? Like, if you're a Liverpool fan watching this, do you believe that Diogo Jota should be starting games? Do you want him on the pitch from the start? Or do you see it more as, rather than kind of starters and substitutes, it was Jurgen Klopp who said, wasn't it? Starters and finishers. Do you believe that Diogo Jota is quite simply a finisher? Is it that? Is that the way that it works? Is that the dynamic? But yeah, for anybody who is saying that there is a vulnerability in this Liverpool team, I simply don't see it. And ultimately, Liverpool found a way, and they keep doing it. They've constantly gone behind, but they are so resilient. They fight to the death. They make tactical tweaks. They're brave, and regardless of what's happening at halftime, like I think that whatever Arne Slot is saying at halftime is genius, because I think about half the games that Liverpool have played this season, they have been trailing at some point in the game. I think they have been trailing potentially at half-time, and yet they generally come out after the interval, change the game, and they are still on course to win the Premier League. They are still on course to win the Champions League. They sit top of the Premier League. They sit top of the Champions League. I just don't see it the same way. People are saying that there's a vulnerability, and if Arsenal were to win against Tottenham, who knows what that could mean for the title race? It's a game of opinions, I guess, but I just don't see anyone getting close to this Liverpool team, primarily because Arne Slot is a genius who has the Midas touch. Would love to hear your thoughts on this. Please do let me know in the comment section below what you think to the points that I've raised. Do you see a vulnerability, or do you think that basically Liverpool are sensational and are going to win the league? If you've enjoyed this video, would you do me a favour? Please click subscribe. Please give it a like. It really helps me out, and I would love to welcome you into this community. Thank you so much. Have yourselves a wonderful day.